Okay, today it's Chocoflan, also known as the impossible cake. I'm going to make that impossible possible. Hello everyone and welcome back to my kitchen. Today we are going to be preparing Chocoflan, also known as pastel imposible or impossible cake. And what's impossible about it? Certainly not the eating, because it's absolute delicious chocolate cake with flan fused on the top of it. What seems impossible about this recipe is that we're going to make a simple chocolate cake recipe, put it into this bundt pan, and then we're going to make a sort of dense flan, dribble it over the top. Yes, honest to goodness, we're going to dribble liquid flan over a chocolate cake batter. We'll put it into the oven, and as it cooks, the flan sinks to the bottom, the cake rises to the top, and you have the most miraculous thing in the world. Okay, so it's really a very simple scientific understanding that you need here, and that is, as the cake is cooking, it starts expanding. And as it expands and it has all of these gas bubbles in it, it becomes lighter than the flan, rises up through the flan. Honest to goodness, it will look like coming up in blobs. But then it separates from the heavier flan, which is on the bottom, okay? So now let's get to making this thing so you can see how it comes out, because it is within anyone's reach to do. All you need is a regular size bundt pan. This is one that holds 10 cups. And then I really heavily buttered it already. I will say that you have to spend time doing that because you want this whole thing to come out. Now it's gonna have this crown of cajeta, goat's milk caramel, on the top. So you might need to go to a grocery store, a Mexican grocery store, to get this one. This one is called Amorcito Corazon. Coronado is another brand. I like the one that says goat's milk caramel because they also make a cow's milk, but the goat's milk is a more traditional flavor. So you buy that. This one says cajeta quemada, which means it's the darker version, not the really light one, which I think works really good with the chocolate cake. I poured out a cup of that, and I'm going to put it into the microwave for about 20 seconds here. And we're gonna just soften it up. We don't want it to be hot. When it is softened, then I'm gonna dribble it all around to coat this buttered mold that's a bundt pan. Okay, we're going to drizzle this all in here. Most of it will collect at the bottom. Don't worry too much about that. But I do really want to see if I can get some of it coating up the sides a little bit here. Now, we don't want it to be too hot because it will really melt a lot of that butter, and we want the protective quality of the butter there. There's a little bit more of this cajeta left in here because it's pretty thick stuff. You could imagine trying to do this if you didn't soften it just a little bit in the microwave. It would be really hard to work with. Okay, now we're going to make a very simple chocolate cake batter. This one does not have butter in it. It has oil in it. I'm starting here with 1.25 cups of flour. This is all-purpose flour, and I'm going to put in our cocoa powder, which is 1/2 cup. Now, this cocoa powder is the extra dark stuff, and I highly recommend your using it. The dark cocoa powder is available most places, and it will produce a much richer chocolate flavor in this. I have baking soda, baking powder, and salt here. Those are all going to go in. I'm using a large whisk here to evenly distribute them rather than trying to sift it. I've got a cupful of sugar that's going to go into this. Again, whisk it to make sure that it's all together here. And then I have 1 cup of milk, 1/2 cup of oil, and then I have an egg. I'm going to just drop into this. And I'm going to, you grab a small whisk here to whisk these things together. And just until I can see that the egg has been incorporated into these liquid ingredients. And this is a very simple chocolate cake recipe because you just pour your liquid ingredients right into the dry ingredients and use your whisk to mix it all together. No use of a mixer here or anything because it goes together quite easily. And you can see that dark cocoa powder makes this a darker chocolate color. Okay, and that's really all you have to do with that part of it. Okay, so now I'm going to get rid of these guys over here, or that, and with my spatula, I'm going to pour this cake batter in here. And you'll notice that the cajeta sort of rides up a little bit around it. It will still be on the bottom, but it will also be up around the edges of our cake. Now, at some point, this whole thing does seem very impossible because you're expecting everything to stay separate in this. The cajeta needs to stay separate from the cake mix or the cake batter. And the cake batter has to stay separate from the flan as they sort of switch places and become something different. Okay, just a couple of drips there of those things. And now we're going to make this very simple flan recipe. So I've got 4 eggs in my blender jar, and I am going to pour in a can of evaporated milk. Now this is a 14-ounce can. That's a standard size can. And now I'm going to put in sweetened condensed milk. So there's no added sugar in this. It's just the sugar that's in the sweetened condensed milk. So this stuff is really, really thick. You will definitely have to have a spatula to get it out. And you want to get all of it out. It's really easy to leave some of it stuck in the can. Okay, I think we're about where we need to be with that. And then I'm going to, I'll put some vanilla in here too. I've already missed that part of it here. But we want to pour about a teaspoon of vanilla into it. And then put the top on this and blend it just until the eggs are incorporated. Now, we don't want to over blend it. That's really all it's going to take, I think. Now, we are incorporating a little bit of air into it as the blender blends the eggs with the 2 milks there. So I'm going to give it a few gentle raps to try to dispel some of that air. If you want to be super precise, and this is what we do at our restaurant when we're making pastel imposible, is to let it sit for 4 hours. Now that's not pretty much anything we would want to do at home because you want to keep working with all of this. Now I've got a ladle. There's several different ways to get this, to make this work. But one of the ways that I like to do it is to just let this sort of run over this ladle and down around over this is just a very gentle way to get it into the cake. I can hold this down. Some people like to pour it over the back of a spoon. Feel free to do that as well. And when you get all of this on, we're ready to put it into a water bath and bake it. Okay, now we're on to the next part of all of this. And that is the baking. Now the baking is done sort of like you would bake a large flan or any kind of flan in a hot water bath, because we're really making chocolate cake and flan all together. First thing I'm going to do is to secure the top of this with foil, that so that we can have this cooking in a kind of closed environment. I know you don't do that with a cake, but you do it with custards like a flan. So I'm going to just tamp that down like that, just so that it's secure. I have some water already in getting hot over here, and I'm going to put this water into this pan to a depth of about 2 inches after I set the cake in there. Okay, so some of you will want to do this pouring of the hot water after you have pulled your oven rack out and set this whole thing in there. I find it easier to do it the other way around, so that's the way that I'm going to do it here. I'm going to pour this boiling water, which is of course not the safest thing in the whole wide world to do, so you have to be ready for this kind of a thing. But I'm going to pour this water in here to that depth of 2 inches. So if you have a 9 by 13 pan that's deep, that's what you can use for it. If you don't have one, you can do a roasting pan. Think about a turkey roaster. If you have one of those for Thanksgiving dinner, then you can easily do this. I'm going to open the oven, and I'm just going to pick it up and slide it right into the oven. You have to be strong enough to do this and feel comfortable doing this part of it. But I'm just going to pick it up like this and put it in directly into the oven. Okay, I'm going to let this cook at 350 degrees for about an hour and 15 minutes. That's usually what it takes, until the chocolate cake, which will at that point be on top, is springy to the touch, and a toothpick inserted comes out relatively clean. Okay. Now I pulled back this foil just to make sure that it was done on this one side, and I could tell that it was. So now we're going to uncover the whole thing together. So we're going to do this. Look at that. So beautiful. So it's springy on the top. You could use a toothpick. I can tell that it's going to be just perfect now. But you could use a toothpick to go in there, and there's going to be just a little bit. This is a moist chocolate cake, so there's going to just be a little bit of residual stuff on that toothpick. But now we're going to let it cool down completely. I'll take it out of this water bath and let it cool for about an hour at room temperature, and then I'm going to put it into the refrigerator, and I'm going to let it cool till, well, 3 or 4 hours until it's completely cold. That'll make the unmolding of it easier. Okay, this is the moment. So I've used a very thin bladed knife to go around. I've already gone around all the outside now, but I'm making sure that here in the center part of it, it's also free. And then what I like to do is kind of shake it a little bit. And when I feel it jiggle in there, then I'm pretty confident that it's going to come out just right. Put our serving platter here, and then I'm going to flip the two of them upside down like that, and I think it did it. Here it goes. Oh, yeah. Now there's some cajeta still in here, so we want to scrape that out and drizzle it all over the top of this. Yeah, that's the good stuff. Well, it's all really good. Okay, now it's time to show you what it looks like on the inside. So I'm going to cut a small piece of it here, because this, it is so sort of impossible seeming, and it's such a magical thing to make. And then when you serve this to your guests, you see the two layers of the chocolate cake, moist and dark there, with the flan on top of it. Put that down there. Got a fork here. And this is the payoff. I love this stuff.